This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. We want to say thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. And wherever you download your podcast, make sure you give us a 5-star review. You guys have been amazing and awesome, and all of those good descriptions of of good behavior. Because we are rolling up to 2,700 subscribers on our way to 3,000. We're trying to get here before September 11th, so go ahead and get us there. You know what September 11th is? It's the first game of the Atlanta Falcons. Woo woo! So yeah, we thank you guys for supporting us and making sure we are, getting the word out for us, because we are making some strides, and I'm just super excited about that. But what else I'm excited about is that Austin Riley put himself in GOAT category or GOAT conversation by surpassing the GOAT in Major League Baseball, and Dean Pease he tired of the bull crap. And we'll talk about that. And last but not least, and for the culture, Trae Young, John Collins, and DeJounte Murray, we got a sneak peek of the Hawks' big three. We'll talk about that and for the culture. But first, Austin Riley breaks the extra base hits in a month record by going 26 extra base hits in the month of July. And he breaks Hank Aaron's record of 25. That was back in 1961. And ironically, it was in July, the month of July as well.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's just one of those things just to kind of see a player just go off, and that's what we've been witnessing from Austin Riley here lately, and it definitely has helped the Braves, as they got the sweep against the Arizona Diamondbacks over the weekend.
Yeah, and what Austin Riley, like you said, has been able to do this entire month, it's like really he's just been progressing towards this. And going back to June 1st and the start of the Braves 39-14 run, best in the majors over these last 2 months, his trajectory has gone up and the Braves have benefited from it, right? So
Right.
like you said yesterday, in a pitcher's duel between Kelly and
Max Fried,
Max Fried, you see every hit, every on base counts. And
Right.
so and so literally, Austin Riley gets the one double, and that ties the record. He gets the second double, and that makes the record. And the other guy who's been in that sort of player of the month, Braves player of the month, possibly NL player of the month conversation is the guy who he actually drove in, which is Matt Olson. And it was kind of funny because we were all like, "Shut on, Matt! Come on, you got this!" Like I think we were all kind of pushing.
I literally was like, "There's no way he scores from first base." Matt Olson is probably might be the slowest person on the Braves roster, and they were like, "I'm like, we're sitting up here rooting for him to score from first base. No way possible!" But
and
he made it happen.
But you know what? I loved it because how about that is the perfect way to punctuate the month of July. Like the Braves have just been in no quit mode, just gutting it out, grinding it out, somehow getting wins, right? And isn't it also interesting that the very team that kind of sent them down the rabbit hole to have a come to Jesus conversation is the very team that helped them to tune up. So that, of course, was at the end of May. Now, here we are 2 months later, and they're helping them to really tune up, whether it's the pitching rotation, the bullpen, or even getting your bats back in order, helping them to get ready for what you and I both know is going to be one of the most challenging, if not challenging, weeks for the Braves coming up.
No doubt about it. And one person who has been faced with a lot of challenges is Ian Anderson. He made a case for Alex Anthopoulos to not pull a trigger on a trade deadline. We'll talk about that. But first, tell the folks about BetOnline and what they have going on, how they partner with Locked On Sports Atlanta.
Yeah, you guys remember we talked about recently how a Mickey Mantle card is likely going to go for $10 million, right?
Good
and if you want to know if that is accurate, then the number one source for betting needs and sports info is betonline.net. And why do I mention that? Because that could be an over-under situation. Will it go for 10 mil? Will it go under 10 mil? Will it go over 10 mil? So that's something. And I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek in what Jarvis and I are going to be talking about in segment 2. And that is top 10 defense for the Falcons, that could be an over under for you as well. You want to know how to get some insight on that? You go to betonline.net. They give you sports development, league reviews, and news about your favorite teams, your favorite players. It's really that best spot and kind of an all encompassing spot for scores, podcasts, and news. Again, even if it's your football, your college football, or your pro football, or if it's a niche sport like MMA, golf, boxing, you can get all the same information right there. So head to that website today. You can use your mobile device. Definitely go to the site after you check out ATL Day Ones, but still go to that site and tell them we sent you, because as sportscasters, we also want to keep up with the trends, and that is where we go to do it. So Bet Online, that is exactly where the game starts.
No doubt about it. And the game got started for Ian Anderson over the weekend as well. 6 innings pitched, 9 strikeouts, and only 1 walk. We've talked about this on Friday, and I believe wholeheartedly Ian Anderson
Mhm.
just listened to the show. And I think this was confirmation that was the case. Yep.
Maybe so, yes. Maybe so. We were really on the struggle bus trying to say, oh man, we don't know. And it did feel like do or die. And I
Right.
believe that, yeah, he was kind of feeling that pressure as well. Like, I need to do something because Alex Anthopoulos will get on the phone in a heartbeat and try to make something happen. So I think that was a breath of fresh air and a bit of a relief for Braves country to see that Ian Anderson. And again, assuming that that was enough. And I do believe that it was actually enough to kind of save him. If that's enough, all we can do, Jarvis, is hope that this Ian Anderson is the one who shows up for the remainder of the season to help to push the Braves into the postseason. But I also want to give a shout out to Kyle Wright and recognize Max Fried, because my God, Kyle Wright, 13 wins. You're
Good
leading
Lord.
the majors. It's crazy what he's been able to do as well. And also Max Fried. And I wanted to mention Max, Jarvis, because in a walk-off win, like what Austin Riley was able to do, and we all believe that he's probably going to be that NL Player of the Month, didn't want Max Fried's performance, Dylan Lee's performance, Kenley Jansen's performance. 9 scoreless innings is what that group put together. Max Fried put together 7 of those scoreless innings, 5 strikeouts, just a couple walks, and now Fried has 59 and a third innings without giving up a home run. It's a bad, bad man as well. So again, we know what Austin Riley did to give the Braves the win, but that pitching staff also put them in position to get that dub.
No doubt about it, and that's what traditionally the Braves have been. The pitching staff have always kind of carried them, through these light situations when they go through the lulls of the season, and you have to lean on different phases of the game to get you through. And Max Fried and Kyle Wright have been those guys for the entirety of
Yeah.
the 22-2 season for sure. And
Mhm.
the expectation is for them to continue to do that.
Yeah.
We don't expect anything less. And I think that but like with that being said, is that something now? Does Alex Anthopoulos change his mind because they just added here Adrianjas and they designated for assignment Robinson Cano
Mhm.
in conflation with that particular move. So
Mhm.
does Alex Anthopoulos change? Is he working the phones as much as he possibly potentially was before Ian Anderson had this type of performance? T.
Yeah, I think he might be working the phones just a little less,
Mm-hmm.
because there's some solid, and it's very, very in the early stages as far as what we're seeing out of Ozzy Albies. But there are some encouraging things that we're seeing out of him to say he is on path and slightly ahead of target in terms of him being on a 60-day IL, but possibly coming back, right? So that to me is positive. So yeah, you have Adrianza, you get him in there, you DFA Cano, you got him for a couple of weeks just to kind of, I don't know, put a band-aid on the wound.
Can you even
But
call it Band-Aid?
yeah, I'm like, I don't really even want to call it a band-aid, but I think
You just ran some water on the issue. You just
yeah,
ran
I'm
some
like,
water on.
I don't know.
When you
Yeah,
ain't got no
I'm like,
Band-Aid, you outside, get a
no,
cut. You just run a little water
exactly.
on
You
it.
come back in, right, and that's what you do. So Ahiri Adrianza, I think, is a better choice there. And if we assume that Ian Anderson can at least keep this up for the rest of the season, or even be half of what he was on Saturday, then it
Yeah.
allows Alex Anthopoulos a little more leverage to just go ahead and get a replacement for Adam Duvall. And I think that just pulls some pressure off of what the Braves are going to need, assuming that reacquiring Ahire Adrianza and having Ian Anderson kind of look a little like Ian again could be that's a good look for Alex Anthopoulos. 24 hours, less than 24 hours before that deadline.
And I'm with you because I think that anything they add after this, because like if this is what a peak is, like you say, if Indianapolis is half of what he was on Saturday, I think the Braves will be okay with that, because at the end of the day, when you get to the playoffs, the rotation shrinks anyway. So I think that that's something that we definitely keep an eye on. But
Mhm.
I'm with you. I don't think that he does. He has a lot more pressure than he did after performance from Ian Anderson. I think that kind of gave him a little. He can sleep a little bit better at night now. Whether or not people care or not care if Deshaun Watson gets some sleep at night, we now know that he has been suspended for 6 games. And the NFLPA, before the news dropped of his suspension, NFLPA
Mhm.
said they weren't going to appeal. So we know that side is okay with whatever the decision the judge made.
Mhm.
Now we have to see whether or not Roger Goodell and the likes of the NFL is going to try to appeal. They still have an opportunity to do that, but Deshaun Watson, only 6 games. I know for me, I was sitting up here like, okay, he's at least going to get 10. And I
Mhm.
think that, the Browns were kind of like thinking like that too when they traded for him, because they only gave him $1 million in salary this year. So they were expecting him to, like, okay, we know more than like he's going to be suspended for quite a bit. And I
Mhm.
and I and I think for the NFL to come back initially
Mhm.
for a 6 game suspension, I just think this is just it just seems dirty to me. Like, only 6?
Yeah, it's interesting because I always said it was going to be between 6 and 8. I always
Okay.
said, I lean to six more or so than I even lean to eight. My thought on eight was they may come out of the gates with eight. Arbitrator comes
And
in,
come down to 6, yeah.
and then it's going down to six. That's always where I thought it was going to land. So when we got six out of the gates and the NFLPA said they weren't going to appeal, I said part of that is probably because they knew it was going to be 6 games. It's kind of where
Mm,
they wanted it to sit. Leave it alone. Let's keep it moving. But then also we look at what is important to the NFL, right? And you look at Calvin Ridley because, of course, especially with Deshaun Watson being a native of Atlanta, with Calvin Ridley being the looking like he was going to be the next franchise wide receiver for
right,
the Falcons. Everybody's comparing and contrasting. Well, for the NFL, it's apples and oranges because the integrity of the game, I know people aren't going to like to hear this, especially coming from a female, but I'm just keeping it real with you guys. You have to look at what the records show. So if you look at Cal, 17 games for betting. If you look at Vontez Burfict, 12 games for targeting. You look at DeAndre Hopkins, 6 games for PEDs. You look at Ben Roethlisberger, 6 games for sexually assaulting allegedly a 20-year-old student. I know that the numbers for Deshaun Watson are more than Ben Roethlisberger, but if you're trying to compare apples to apples, he had eight. I'm sorry, he had six. He got reduced to four. Deshaun probably was going to get eight. Probably, got reduced to six before it even got there. I'm just saying that that's kind of where the league stands a lot of
right.
the time. Now they'll do some things like with Josh Gordon, 25 plus games, and Darren Waller 16, but they also had a lot of history in that substance abuse space and violating the league's policy, right?
Right.
Just follow the pattern. And this is consistent, whether you like it or not. This is a bit consistent with what matters to the league, it seems.
It did, and to be honest with you, like, and they have traditionally gone off of the precedent that has been set, right? Like you say, you mentioned Ben Roethlisberger being in that falling in that same category, right? The apples to apples, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of people trying to conflate, Calvin Ridley and Deshaun Watson when they're actually two totally different situations, and I don't
Yes,
think you could
to the
do
league.
that. When
Yeah.
you're talking about having a real conversation about where his the amount of games that he should miss false. And I
Mhm.
think that if you look at the facts of the case, there were no criminal charges. And like, yes, it's dirty. Like I
Oh,
mentioned
no
before,
question. Oh,
this
yeah,
is just a
something went down.
dirty
Yeah,
situation. When
yeah.
he even talking
No,
about it, thinking about it, and I'm just like, my God, dude, it's like you have issues.
you
And I think
know,
that, we all do. Let me just say that. I'm not being judgmental, but we
no,
all have issues. And I think that if your issues are being put out there and for it to blow up like it did and for him to
mhm.
only get 6 games, I think it was just weird to me. And I think that as we go, we'll figure out whether or not Roger Goodell is going to appeal,
Mm.
try to appeal the situation and see if he try to get more games as we go along. But as we continue to go along, speaking of football, we're talking about some real football.
Yeah.
Dean Pease lost his mind over the weekend.
Yes. Yes.
And you know
Yes.
what, T? I was ready to grab my helmet after I
Yes.
saw his statement. Saw his statement. We'll talk about all that next and why I'm trying to consider, coming out of retirement for a 30-second monologue by Mr. Dean Pease. We'll talk about that next on ATL Day Was with Jarvis and T. We'll be right back.